Hey guys, what is up and welcome to a new Tesla update video. So today, as per usual, let's go over Tesla stock, let's go over the market, let's talk about what is happening to Tesla stock, what we can expect moving forward into next week, which is going to be a little bit of a shorter week, but history says that next week, in theory, should be a bullish week. Usually there's a rally into Thanksgiving, so let's see if that happens to play out this week or next week rather. And yeah, I'll give you my thoughts moving forward. So if you enjoyed, don't forget to hit that like button. This is not financial advice, and I am not a financial advisor. And of course, if you enjoy my analysis, etc., I do have a YouTube membership. The description down below has the link to it. For just $3 a month, you can access to all my intraday thoughts, post updates, mainly on Tesla stock, but lately I've been sharing a lot of other stocks, Google, Amazon, etc. Nike actually I shared recently. Nike's actually doing pretty well today, which is nice to see. Intel, which is looking like it's ready to go. So yeah, definitely check it out. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit that like button. Let's jump into it. I'm not a financial advisor if I haven't said that, but Tesla closing the day up almost 4% on the day, closing at $252.50 per share, which obviously compared to the market is pretty damn good. So what does this mean, right? So Tesla finally, let's go on the 1 hour chart. Tesla finally broke out of this rising wedge, right? Yesterday, we talked about this rising wedge pattern, one of my personal favorite patterns. And essentially, you're getting resisted at the same level and you're constantly making higher lows. Pretty simple stuff. We finally broke out of it today on this large white candle on slightly elevated volume. And it's looking pretty good. Now, there are some things I'm not a fan of, which I'll explain, but overall, it obviously looks more bullish and bearish. I think there's absolutely no questioning that part. So Tesla right now, after that breakout, is actually setting up a little bit of a potential bull flag as well. So if we go over the 15-minute chart, this is where I have it kind of plotted out here. You can see the market bias support is coming up for actual support itself, which is a nice thing to see. And we are, of course, consolidating after that large move up in this, well, obvious looking bull flag. So whether you want to look at it as a kind of a bull flag kind of going downwards like this, or on the 1 hour chart, you can kind of also plot it looking something like this, where even just closing a candle above this line right here, let me go ahead and remove this, even just closing a candle above or below one of these lines, why is it not doing it? Is already a pretty good sign as to which direction we'll go next. But we are essentially bull flagging. We are overall bull flagging for Tesla. Now, again, I want to make it clear, just because it's a bull flag and that's what it's called, it doesn't mean it has to play out like a bull flag. It doesn't mean it will go up. There's nothing guaranteeing that whatsoever, which is why waiting for confirmation in these kind of scenarios is always very, very important, because bull flags do not have to play out like a bull flag. Just as an example, let me illustrate another example, or time rather, when Tesla was bull flagging, but it just absolutely didn't play out like a bull flag. For instance, back here, we were massive rally, same idea. Nice little compression in a bull flag. And what do? We didn't go up, we went down. So bull flags, again, they don't always play out in that bullish fashion. So just keep that in mind. Which is why, again, it's very important to wait for some form of confirmation. But nonetheless, it is looking promising for the bulls. And I think the bulls have an overall advantage here. Still, absolutely no questions asked, especially when you look at options flow. Now, the worst case scenario I see for Tesla right now, while maintaining the bullish thesis, is going to be on the 1 hour chart, is going to be essentially, maybe this bull flag doesn't play out as ideally as we want to see it. There is a chance we actually sell off and we actually make our way back down somewhere to around this kind of 347 to 350-ish range, which again, pretty simply put, was that old area of resistance. And now we hopefully, of course, fingers crossed, you never know, nothing is guaranteed, but we turn it back into support. That is another potential scenario that could be, pretty ideal for the bulls and still hold that bullish thesis alive without too much issues. Okay, let me finish the bullish thesis. I was gonna start talking about some bearish things, but let's finish the bullish things. So if this bull flag plays out, at the very least, I think Tesla will make its way back up to about this 365 range. With potentially a target even close to about 385 to best case scenario, in my opinion, closer to $400 per share. Those are the main targets. The first one being absolutely this 365-ish range. And then, of course, breaking above that, well, it'll yield the next pivot point, right? And again, these pivot points aren't just kind of pulled out of nowhere. These pivot points are, well, from the previous historical pivot points, right? With another one being all the way right around here, right? Back here, here, and here. All-time highs, of course, being all the way up here, closer to $420 per share. So those are the main targets above us, assuming we break out of this bull flag, which again, usually bull flags, I assume they will until proven otherwise. So that's kind of the bullish scenario. And then overall, I think Tesla still looks pretty good. MACD is still bullish. RSI looks fine. I guess the only concern is the BX trender is red, but it's kind of giving a lot of false signals right now, so I wouldn't put too much weight into it personally. But overall, all the other indicators and all the patterns and everything like that, most things look pretty solid. Most things look like they want to continue up. However, again, I like to look at it from both perspectives. And I will admit, there are some things that I'm seeing here that I'm not a fan of. First of all, just kind of a note, ignore the daily candle. The wick, for some reason, on trading view, is longer than it should be. I don't know why the trading view wick is longer than it should be, because it is, it should not be this long. You can see here, for instance, on TrendSpider, this is what it actually looks like, the daily chart, right? With the daily candle, the wick only went up to about 357 almost. It never actually passed these candles back here, which is an important distinction, because, you know, we don't want to get, we do want to rather break above this high that we had, right? For instance, on the 1 hour chart, it shows a little bit better. This high we had right here at about, what is this? 358.63. We want to break this high. This is a pretty important high to break. So the things that I don't like, right? That's the bullish side. What do I not like about this situation happening right now? Well, personally, I'm a little bit surprised we didn't go higher. I played this breakout and I did take profit. Now I'm waiting to see what happens with this bull flag, but I'm a little surprised it didn't go higher. I'll be completely honest. I was pretty convinced that once this breakout happens, after this pretty decent compression, after this large move, we would probably make our way to 365. I really thought this move will take us to 365 like very quickly. Like I definitely thought it would happen within the same day. And I honestly even thought it might happen within the next, hour or two of the breakout. That did not happen. Instead, we had a kind of like a weaker breakout than I expected, and now we're just flagging up, which could potentially be what actually finally does bring us up there, of course. But I am a little surprised it's taken this long. I really did think that this breakout on even more volume than this would essentially take us to about 365 almost instantly, right? Again, within an hour or two. So I'm not a fan of that. I'm not a fan of that. This is not really just showing the strength I honestly expected it to after such a consolidation. I definitely expected more strength, but it is what it is. We'll see how it plays out. And on top of that, the volume on this breakout, even though it did increase, of course, relative to, the recent volume, it did increase for sure. But, compared to the volume that we had back here, the volume back here was much, much higher. So there are some things that I'm seeing here, even though, everything and most things are lining up very well for the bulls, there are still some small signs like that where I'm kind of looking at it and I'm like, well, that's giving me a little bit less confidence than I would like to see. Again, I still think it's bullish. I'm still bullishly confident, if that's even a way to put it. But, these kind of factors are detracting a few points from my, bull meter, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? So that's something I'm kind of eyeballing right now. I'm taking a look at the daily chart. You can see the volume on the daily chart, of course, for today's volume itself. It did spike. It did spike for sure. But again, it's just the volume is just not as high as I want it to be, at least relative to these days back here, right? I definitely want to see the volume to be higher than this. So again, I'm just not a fan of the volume. I'm not a fan of the volume behind this push up and breakout that we had today. Makes me a little bit more suspicious. And again, so instead of being, let's say, 9 out of 10 bullish, I'm only maybe like 7.5 out of 10 bullish, if that makes sense, right? So again, still bullish, just could be better. Honestly, could be better. So that's just kind of the main way I'm looking at it on Tesla. Now, the good news is the fact that the weekly, again, ignore the wick. It shows the wick that, on this week that it went higher than last week. We obviously didn't. So that's a little bit of a false thing. Hopefully it'll get fixed by Monday. But the one thing I do like about this weekly candle is the fact that, what was the high today? Let me just double check quickly, just to make sure I'm not, of this week, which was today. The high of today was, see, this says 361.53. I don't know why it says that, because that absolutely wasn't the high. The high was, we'll just say 357. So let's go back to the weekly. 357, which was right around here, right? I'm just gonna put the line here so we have a better visual of it. 357. It was somewhere around here somewhere. That was roughly the high of this weekend today, right? So the one thing, again, I also don't like is the fact that we couldn't move past last week's high. Like the fact that we couldn't break above that on this breakout today, again, not the biggest fan of that. Like this should have been enough pressure. Maybe it'll come. Maybe that bull flag will be what it is. That is always a possibility. But again, I expected a little bit more personally. Now, one thing that is good though, however, is the fact that prior to today, so essentially on yesterday's close, I wish I should have took a screenshot of it somewhere, but we actually were setting up a bearish looking pattern on the weekly, which thankfully with the breakout today, which is the day that this needed to happen, we actually nullified that bearish pattern. And that bearish pattern was going to be a, well, I guess it is technically still here because this wick up here is really like ruining the TA right now because I keep thinking we actually broke higher than we did. But we would have set up a bearish Harami pattern. Now the bullish Harami pattern is this, right? This is the bullish Harami pattern. You can see massive red candle, and then we had a nice little small doji candle, and then you reverse, especially when you break the high, right? Because it is also essentially an inside day candle. We are kind of still doing the opposite of that. It's just much less convincing because I wouldn't really fully call this a bearish Harami candle compared to this one being a bullish one. But if you actually look at the weekly candle properly without this, of course, being incorrect, we are technically printing an inside week candle. So that's going to be something to watch out for next week. So a break above or below this week's range next week, for instance, is something to pay attention to for the bulls and the bears. So essentially above this week's high, which again, go to the 1 hour because the chart is kind of glitching. Let me see if TrendSpider's weekly candles are correct. Hopefully the TrendSpider weekly candles are correct. Maybe it'll be a little bit easier to do it. Now, even this one's showing it higher. I'm not really sure. Am I missing something here, or why? We definitely did not break this last week's high this week. Like at any point did we break it? Let me just double check that. Yeah, we did not break it. I'm not sure why it's showing that. If I go to the 1 hour, for instance, it never shows us breaking above this high. So yeah, the candles are being very, very weird and wonky right now. I'm not entirely sure what's going on. But the point is the fact that we never broke above it, right? So we are technically still actually setting up an inside week candle despite the candles being incorrect. Because again, we're within last week's trading range this week. We never broke above the high or the low. So watch for that. The high that we set this week, which again is sitting somewhere around that 357-ish range, to as low as, which was the low of this week, which was sitting at about $330 per share. Very important range moving into next week and potentially the week after. Once we break one of these highs, ideally next week, that should give us the move in that respective direction for the rest of the week and potentially even the next week or two to come. So watch for that as well, whether it's a break to the upside or to the downside. Obviously nobody knows for sure, but I do think the bulls have the upper hand here. I do think the bulls have absolutely have the upper hand, and I think there is a higher chance we see a bullish continuation up even higher than obviously heading back down for a correction. So that's kind of another thing I'll be looking at moving into next week. Now, another thing to look out for is essentially if we ever do come back down, if Tesla does actually maybe break to the downside from this bull flag and comes back down to retest this range as old resistance, now new support, hopefully. If we ever lose this range, if we ever lose this kind of 347 to about the 350-ish range, and we start closing, especially like 1 hour, especially candles down below that, or especially a daily candle below that range, that to me will signal that this was just a massive false breakout, a massive, massive bull trap. And I think Tesla will begin a correction. And I think Tesla actually may, like unironically, start looking to correct all the way back down, much, much lower, back into the 285-ish region. Again, not saying that'll happen. At this point, I assume it's not going to happen until proven otherwise, but just something to keep in mind if it happens or if it happens really quickly, just so you're kind of prepared for it and ready for it mentally and maybe, for a trade or two. So just watch for that as well. I think that's gonna be really important to understand moving forward for Tesla as well. But in terms of options, so let's take a quick look. A little bit mixed. The bulls are still winning, of course. The bulls are definitely still overwhelming the bears. Absolutely no question about that, especially in the morning. A lot of bullish flow in the morning. But as we kind of inch towards the end of the day, you can see a lot more bearish flow started coming in towards the end of the day, where there was a 3 million call, but it is a 2026 leap. I don't put too much weight into leaps. I don't really care about leaps that much. I think long term, we all know it's probably going to be fine. Short term is the main question, right? Short term, next week, next month even, right? That's what we really kind of care about. And the bears really start to step in towards the end of the day. That's a little bit of a potential concerning sign. But Tesla still has the most confirmed bullish flow regardless for the day at about $15 million. So that's always a good sign regardless. But that's about it for the video. Hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully I didn't make this too confusing. I felt like I kind of went on some little weird tangents, but ultimately watch for this bull flag breakout on the 1 hour and on the 15-minute charts. Watch for a breakout. If we break out again, 365 roughly to as high as about 385 to potentially entering the 400s are my main targets to the upside. And to the downside, you want to hold this bull flag, but ideally the most important thing is to pretty much hold that 347 to 350 range. We cannot go back below that. If we do, very bearish. But if we don't and we hold it, very bullish. Pretty simple stuff. But all that being said, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you on Monday. Peace.